Welcome back to the Underage Packers podcast. Thanks for tuning in to episode 66. I'm one of your co-hosts, Joey. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any more episodes. Joining me, as always, after his 2 weeks absence, I miss talking Packers with him, is my favorite co-host, obviously. Big B, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Today's a great day. Excited for this episode.
Are you surviving the off season so far? I mean, we always once we get to the draft, it's like, man, this off season is going by pretty quick. But then we're like, okay, we got 3 months of pouring mini camp and OTAs. But are you surviving the off season, especially with a dead free agency for the Packers at least?
Yeah, I think I am doing a pretty good job. I think
making it through. At least no Twitter meltdowns quite yet. But reason Big B and I are so excited for this episode is because we have a very special guest. We tried to get friend of the show, Aaron Rodgers, but he had to host Jeopardy, making excuses like usual. So we got the next best thing in Mike Spofford of Packers.com. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, you bet, Joey. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So with Mike, we're going to be talking about, like usual, just because we want to get the best path how to steal his or Wes's job. We're going to ask him a little bit about his career, how we got to where he is today, and then we'll talk about the upcoming NFL draft. So, Mike, let's start off with everybody knows Wes and that he was with the Press Gazette before because he started his career when everything was just starting to get online. But what were your jobs kind of leading up to being a staff writer for the Packers?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Wes and working at the Press Gazette because Wes and I actually had the same job at the Press Gazette at two completely different times. Because when I got out of graduate school, my first job was at the Wausau Daily Herald as a sports writer there. Joined up there in the mid-'90s, worked there for 3 years, moved to the Press Gazette in 1998, and I was covering mostly high schools, also some college basketball, and then, kind of a backup guy on the Packers, which really was very similar to Wes's first job at the Press Gazette when he became full-time after he had been part-time there for a while. He and I actually just missed each other in the Press Gazette newsroom because essentially the person who kind of took my full-time spot when I left the Press Gazette in 2004, then Wes took that individual's part-time spot, and then everything kind of evolved from there. So actually, when I left the Press Gazette, I got out of sports writing for a little bit, had my second child on the way, was trying to see if maybe a change in things and not working so many nights and weekends would work out better for the family. Mm-hmm. And bottom line is it didn't because I wasn't that happy. So fortunately was able to get back into sports writing when the Packers in 2006, they decided for the first time to hire a full-time website writer. Packers.com up until 2006, the first few years of its existence, the writing for the website was only done by either part-timers or interns. I was actually hired as the first full-time writer for Packers.com in 2006, and here we are 15 years later, and I'm still there.
And your whole career has led up to this podcast episode, so here you are today. So what do you think? You've worked through 15 years at Packers.com, like you mentioned, and there's been such a revolution in how journalism, reporting on sports, how much has changed into digital media in these years that you've experienced at Packers.com?
Yeah, I mean, my job right now is really not a whole lot like what it was when I was first hired 15 years ago. The biggest changes, I would say, to sort of keep things in a nutshell, one, the expansion into the different media forms, doing, as Wes and I do Packers Unscripted. I've also, we do all kinds of video work. I didn't do anything behind a camera, or I should say in front of a camera or behind a microphone. Didn't do any of that really for my first 5 or 6 years or so with the website. It was all just writing. And then the other thing that has really changed too, and has really taken off, especially over the last, I would say 8 to 10 years, is the interaction with the fans, via the insider inbox column, live chats, live blogging during the games. Again, my first handful of years at the website, we didn't do any of that. And now that's very much a part of what we do at Packers.com. Fans can send us questions through insider inbox. You can log on if I'm doing a live chat or if I'm live blogging a game and, join in the conversation there. So there's a lot more fan interaction, direct fan interaction that occurs now that definitely was not happening more than a decade ago.
I think my favorite part about your Insider Inbox series is just looking at like the town names that people live in, because Wisconsin cities and towns are a different breed. You got like Sheboygan, Oshkosh, all types of different weird names. So what are some of the behind the scenes things that might not be your least favorite parts of the job? And I guess I'll just rephrase it. What is your favorite part of the job? And then a least favorite part that nobody really sees?
Well, for sure, the best part of the job is game day. And it's also one of the hardest days of the week, so to speak, during the season because of the amount of work. It's a ton of work, but it's what we do it for. It's to be there. It's to be there on game day. It's to cover the games, to be able to witness the live action as much as possible. This last season was a little different because Wes and I did not travel in 2020, so we were only there live for the home games, and we were watching the road games on television for the first time. But game day is the best. I mean, it's what every week leads up to, and it's the same for the fans. It's that way for us as writers, at least it is for me, because that's what the fans care about the most is the result of the game, how it happened, why it happened, and we're trying to get those stories written, those post-game stories written, the analysis, the editorial, the notes, all that. We're trying to get that stuff up on the website as soon as we can after the game. It's a race against the clock, and there's a lot of adrenaline, a lot of intensity to it, but it's also a heck of a lot of fun. So that is definitely the best part of things. I don't know as far as the downside. I mean, every office situation, you have your meetings that you have to go to, and you have there's different things we have to do in the off season that, we need to dedicate some time to those things in the off season that frankly, we don't have time to do it during the season. So we we get to blow off some of those work requirements, and but then, you have to get them done in the off season because that's when the time allows. So, but that's just your standard business office paperwork, and that kind of thing that everybody has to do.
So those are questions about your job. Now Big B has some really hard hitting questions for you. Done with the softballs. Big B, let's hear your very hard prepared questions here.
All right. So something that people have been arguing about have been the draft hats recently. So what are your thoughts on the new draft hats?
The draft hats? I wish they would, stop having to design a new one every year. I mean, it's, wouldn't it be cool to see, Jair Alexander and Rashawn Gary and Josiah DeGuara all wearing the same hat the day that they get drafted by the Packers? It always has to be a different one every year. I get it from the merchandising standpoint and all that, but just standardize them, and then those pictures year after year when guys get drafted, I think it would look a lot cooler that way. That's just my opinion.
Start it now so we can have some 2021 draft pick matching up with 2041.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think that would be cool.
All right. What's up next, Big B?
All right. What is it like to work with Larry McReynolds?
Larry? Oh, it's a blast, man. I mean, I tell you, that guy there, as I'm sure you've seen on our website, we do the 3 things videos and other videos and stuff with Larry. And I'm telling you, he never tells us, me or Wes or the guy behind the camera, whoever it is, he never tells us what he's going to say. So when we react to whatever he has to say, on camera, it's a genuine reaction because we don't know. He doesn't tell us. whether we're laughing or we give him a quizzical look or whatever the case might be, it is absolutely natural because he's as good as there is, in my opinion, at just being totally spontaneous and rolling with it with the camera rolling, and it's a heck of a lot of fun.
Now, does he have that same energy all the time that he has on camera? He has the energy of a wacky 20-year-old at sometimes.
No, no, Larry is not like that all the time. He definitely turns it on. He definitely turns it on for the camera, but I love his on-camera personality. And I also love being able to just talk football with the guy off camera too, because, as somebody who was in the trenches in the NFL for as long as he was, he has a perspective that, that there's a lot of things that have changed in the NFL since Larry McReynolds played, but the game is still pretty much the same in the trenches, and he can let you know what's going on down there and in there, and that's always a neat perspective to have.
All right, I'm looking forward to your answers on these next two, especially the last one. The last one is only a question Big B would ask, but let's hear those last two, Big B.
Okay, what is your favorite season that you covered?
My favorite season that I covered. Wow, that's a really
preferably
good
of the Packers and not high school rugby.
Yeah, I assume you're talking. I assume you're talking Packers. Boy, that's a really good. The answer honestly is not 2010, the Super Bowl season. Obviously that was the most fun, postseason to cover with the Packers, going all the way. But if I had to pick a favorite season, to be honest, I would probably say 2009. And the reason I say that is I don't know how old you guys were in 2009, but the Packers were actually like 4-4 at the midway point that year, and they lost an absolutely dreadful game down in Tampa to the Buccaneers, a game they absolutely had no business losing, and it was a terrible performance. It was
Sounds familiar.
Awful. It was actually, I want to say it was right after the two games where the Packers had played against Brett Favre when he had obviously joined the Vikings there in 2009. They had lost those couple of games. Then they lost to the Buccaneers and were 4-4. And a lot of people were completely writing the Packers off. It was like, forget about it, whatever. And then suddenly, they beat the Dallas Cowboys. I believe it was like 17-7, kind of a defensive struggle at Lambeau Field. That sparked a 7-1 run over the second half of the season. And the Packers got in the playoffs and then played one of the most entertaining playoff games, as heartbreaking as the finish was, but one of the most entertaining playoff games you will ever see. That wild card game out in Arizona that ended up 51-45 in overtime, when the Packers had rallied from 3 touchdowns down to tie the game and then got it to overtime and all that. So there's a lot of really good memories. Aside from the 2 losses to the Vikings and Brett Favre, there are a lot of really good memories from that 2009 season. And then obviously that led into the 2010 season that everyone remembers.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. I was thinking of the 2018 or 2008 season, but everybody talks about 2016 run the table. I guess there just wasn't as good as the saying with second-year starter Aaron Rodgers.
It was quite a run there. The second half of 2009, the Packers were playing as as good a football as anyone in the league. They had some issues on defense. In fact, the only loss, if I'm remembering things correctly, the only loss in the second half of 2009 was on a last play of the game touchdown pass by Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh that beat the Packers, or they would have gone 8-0. Aside from that one play, they would have gone 8-0 the second half of that year heading into the playoffs.
Wow. All right, Big B, final hard hitter question from Mike.
Favorite story with Jamal Williams?
Big B is Jamal Williams super fan, so better not disappoint.
Oh, well, the thing, it's not, I guess I'll say a couple of things. One, it was always interesting to, like, when Wes and I would do the pregame, like, Periscope, Facebook Live down on the field, like before the game. Sometimes when we would do that, Jamal Williams would come by in the background doing like his little dancing thing, with the headphones on and stuff like that. So, and of course, Wes and I have, our backs to him. So we didn't always know if he was in the shot or if those who were watching us, live on camera at that time, what they were seeing. So, so it was always entertaining to see whether or not he would actually show up in the background of our live shots doing his dancing. But the other one which I will never forget was when I was part of a group of reporters around his locker when he asked someone to repeat a question because he said, "I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even listening." That one is an all-timer for me. I don't think I have ever heard a player admit to a reporter in the midst of a group interview at his locker that he simply wasn't even listening to the question. But that was Jamal, and it was totally good-natured and good-hearted. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure you've probably seen and heard the clip. It's hilarious, and I will always remember him for that one as far as the interview portion of things.
That was on Zoom. He could just find something to blame it on. Oh, my computer wasn't working. So now let's talk a little bit about the Packers and 2021 draft here. Finally getting into this. So you mentioned a little bit earlier the transition or Brett Favre being on the Vikings. So there's kind of possibly at the start of another one of those transitions from another quarterback. So specifically with the draft selections of Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers, I think a lot of people like to compare the two, but that as someone who was there, I was 4 months old when this selection happened. So take us through kind of not only maybe the reasoning behind the selection, both selections, but also the fan reactions to both Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers pick.
Well, I mean, to be honest, the fan reaction in both cases was rather similar because it was a pick that people didn't see it coming. They didn't really understand, like, why, when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback playing, the way he is, do you invest a first round draft pick in a guy that, you're not planning to have him play for at least a couple of years? And fans are always, they're always looking to the draft, especially those high picks in the draft, for that immediate help at the position, at any position, to help the team make another run in the playoffs, get to a Super Bowl, whatever the case might be. So the fan reaction, seems similar to me. What I think that where I think the circumstances are very different, in a couple of respects. One, back in 2005, Ted Thompson was sitting there at 24. He did not make a trade. He did not move. Aaron Rodgers simply fell into his lap. And the Packers had him obviously very, very highly rated on their board, and just felt like, there was just no way you could pass him up. And the fact that, Brett Favre had already been hemming and hawing about retirement for a couple of years up until that point, it was a fortuitous run of events there for Green Bay to be able to get Aaron Rodgers when they did. Last year, with regard to the Jordan Love pick, as you know, Brian Gutekunst decided to traded a fourth round pick to move up to select Love. So that was different. We've heard Aaron Rodgers say he wants to play into his 40s. He said many times he would love to be able to play his entire career for the Packers. So the context there was very, very different from, Brett Favre back in 2005. I think, I'll admit, like, there are some elements to the rationale that I think are still difficult to understand when the Packers were coming off of an appearance in the NFC Championship game. But at the same time, I'll say this: 2018 and 2019 statistically were not the greatest seasons for Aaron Rodgers. If you're the GM and you feel like you maybe have to hedge against the future a little bit because you're not sure where things are going with the new head coach, you can't be 100% sure that Aaron Rodgers is going to go out in year 2 with Matt LaFleur and win an MVP. I can understand the pick from that standpoint. And then also simply just wanting to have a really good quarterback prospect to be able to develop. And, I won't get into I know there's all kinds of stuff being thrown out there right now in terms of what's going to happen and this and that and all this controversy about the contract. I shouldn't even say controversy, but speculation or whatever the case is with regard to Rodgers' contract. But I will say this, and I said it last year at the time, it's not totally out of the realm of possibility for Jordan Love to be the next Jimmy Garoppolo. That Aaron Rodgers, plays several more years for the Packers and Jordan Love ends up getting traded, without ever being any more than Aaron Rodgers' backup in Green Bay. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's definitely within the realm of possibility. So for me, where I sit, I'm like, hey, let's just let it play out and let's see what happens. And Aaron Rodgers just won the MVP. I think he's going to have another great year in 2021. And there's a lot of pressure on this team to get to the Super Bowl after coming so close the last couple of years. To me, that's what matters most for 2021. You worry about the future later.
Yeah, I would completely agree with a lot of things you said there. There's just some things like I understand the rationale, like you mentioned, on wanting to get ahead of future quarterback problems because you see teams like the 49ers just 2 weeks ago having to trade up a lot of draft capital to take a risk on a guy who they're going to most likely throw out there pretty early in his career. So I like the idea of getting ahead. And then there's just some stuff, like you also mentioned, that we'll never be able to know exactly, did they really like Jordan Love so much where they're saying, we might have to move on from Rodgers 1 or 2 years more early than we'd possibly like to, just because we really think that Jordan Love can be something special. But there's just a lot to play out on how he develops and all of that. So, Big B, what do you think is the biggest difference you could point to on the Packers in 2005 selecting a quarterback from California and the Packers in 2020 selecting a quarterback from Utah State?
Biggest difference, I would say, like Mike said, how Brett Favre was contemplating retirement, Rodgers really saying that he wants to play into his 40s. Two completely different scenarios, but I just can't wait to see how this all plays out with Jordan Love.
Yes, there's certainly going to be some heartbreak, but it will make a great documentary once it all plays out.
You make a good point there, Joey, when you said, there's a saying in the NFL, the worst time to draft a quarterback is when you need one, because that's when, the chances of making a mistake are greater. Now, as I've said in Insider Inbox and on our Unscripted podcast, when I was watching the draft last year and I was covering it from home because none of us were together, we were all on our laptops and everything, doing all the coverage in isolated areas. When I saw that the Packers were trading up from 30 to 26, I thought, oh, they're drafting Patrick Queen, the linebacker from LSU. That's got to be the pick. And then it pops up, Jordan Love from Utah State, which is kind of funny because my son last spring was graduating from Utah State, and we had brought him home due to the pandemic. So and he was up in his bedroom, so I immediately sent him a text because I couldn't leave my computer. I said, hey, we just drafted your quarterback from out there in Logan, Utah. But anyway, side note aside, I thought the Packers were drafting Patrick Queen when the trade up was being made. And so I was surprised that they took Jordan Love. But all that being said, I completely understand why Gutekunst did what he did. I get it. I really do.
Yeah. So Patrick Queen is exactly what I thought too. If the 2020 draft was nothing else, it was surprising with every single pick. So talking about this year's draft, I'll ask you first. Do you have a favorite prospect or a draft crush, as the kids would say these days?
Oh, I don't go down that road, Joey. I'll admit to you. I don't let myself get too attached to any one prospect. But if I were to say the three positions that I think are the highest on the Packers radar priority list, however you want to say it, I think it's offensive tackle, defensive line, and cornerback. And you can put those in whatever order you want to. But that's what I see from a need perspective as what's up there the highest. Now, it seems like there are quite a few pretty good cornerbacks out there, and also a lot of really, really good offensive tackles out there. Yeah. I think there could be somebody at either of those positions who will be there for the Packers at 29. Where I don't have that same confidence as far as a top guy falling to 29 is a defensive lineman, because this draft is not as deep on the defensive line as some other drafts have been in the past. So I think because the odds of a guy like that being available at 29, when I look at one of those top guys on the defensive line, Christian Barmore from Alabama, if he is still there at the bottom of the first round, it would be really, really hard for me if I were Brian Gutekunst to pass on a defensive lineman like that, because I'm sure you guys have looked at it too. I looked at it and explained it in Inbox several weeks ago. Finding a long-term bona fide Pro Bowl caliber defensive lineman late in the first round, the track record is not good. The Packers hit a home run with Kenny Clark 5 years ago at 26. That is not the rule. That is the exception with defensive linemen when you're picking late in the first round. You just look at the last 10 years of drafts, and it proves it. So in a year that is thin on the defensive line, if a guy like Barmore from Alabama is actually still there late in the first round, it'd be really hard for me to pass him up.
So yeah, I love Christian as well from Alabama. Is that right?
Yes.
So it's always interesting. It always depends on how the board falls. No matter how many mock drafts you do, how many you look at, there's always going to be at least a few surprises on draft night. So Big B, what do you think? Brian Gutekunst has made a move up, and every year he has been the general manager so far. What do you think they do this year? Do they stay put? Do they trade down? Because, there's not as much information on these prospects. Some of them opted out. No combine this year, so you get a lot of manipulated pro day numbers. So what do you think the Packers do with their 29th overall pick this year?
Well, over the past couple weeks, I've really convinced myself that they were going to trade up in the draft, and I don't know who they're going to pick by trading up. I don't know who they love, of course, but I've really convinced myself that they're going to trade up this year.
Yep, I just feel there's so many prospects that I look at that I think fit perfectly with what they want. They have the also glorious relative athletic score that Brian Gutekunst loves. So that it's going to be a fun night to look at, especially after last year's draft, how they go about this year. So one final question, looking ahead to July and August, Mike, what are you most looking forward to this offseason? The long snapper competition between Joe Fortunato and Hunter Bradley, loves progression, some new rookies. What are you most looking forward to?
I mean, that's hard to say right now without knowing, what the Packers draft class is and where some of these rookies are going to be competing and those spots and whatnot. But I will say this: I think the return of Josiah DeGuara at tight end from his season-ending knee injury from early last year, I think that's going to be interesting to follow. I don't know if he's going to be ready for training camp or if he won't be ready until the start of the regular season, or what timeline is there. But with what the Packers have at tight end, you're bringing back the big dog, Mercedes Lewis. Robert Tonyan had obviously the big breakout season with 11 touchdowns. You've got Jay Sternberger. You're hoping he can stay healthy after dealing with some injuries the last couple of years. Dominique Daphne, came in late in the season and made a contribution there. And then you got DeGuara coming back from injury. I really like the Packers tight end room, and Matt LaFleur loves guys at that position. So if you get that position back to full strength, I think that's one definitely to watch in training camp to see how it unfolds and what different roles guys are going to have.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the draft class, if they draft a not so sexy pick like a offensive tackle, not too much to look into the offseason or preseason there. We know if they draft a fast, speedy wide receiver, maybe Kadarius Toney, then that's a lot to look forward to. But Big B, what do you think as of now you're looking most forward to in this offseason once they get back to practicing? When we make our trip up to training camp, obviously.
Yeah. Probably who's gonna take running back number 3, I would say. Because
Yeah, that might be hard to tell, and it will probably go on throughout the season. But after losing Jamal Williams to the Lions, the GOAT, you have to account for who's going to be behind AJ Dillon, and you have kind of a plethora of guys between Mike Weber, Dexter Williams, a lot of different interesting guys that they might like inside, but we really have no clue their thoughts on as of now. I think you've something to say, Mike?
Yeah, I was going to say, if on the defensive side of the ball, I think the really interesting thing is going to be just what is going to change with Joe Barry, as defensive coordinator taking over for Mike Pettin. I don't see the Packers, having this completely different look schematically, on defense. I don't know if there are a lot of things to the naked eye, so to speak, that are going to look a lot different. But how are certain roles gonna, how are things gonna sort out at inside linebacker with Chris Barnes and Kamal Martin, and then maybe another draft pick thrown into that mix? What are they going to do with regard to the nickel and dime packages? With Joe Barry, how does he want to deploy certain guys, whether it's Darnell Savage, whether it's Jair Alexander, and then as far as the your 3 edge rushers, the Smiths and Rashawn Gary, how much are they going to be on the field together? Who's going to have what role on, in certain situations, or will all 3 be out there even more in more situations than they were last year? So I think all of those things are going to be really interesting to follow with Joe Barry and the Packers getting a new coordinator on that side of the ball.
Yeah, the defense is pretty much all the same players. I think the only 2 people they lost was Raven Green and Christian Kirksey. So a lot bringing the band back together for another run this time with a new coordinator, though. Mike, that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, you bet. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime. Make sure you subscribe to our channel at Underage Packers. Follow us on Spotify. Give us a good review on Apple Podcasts, and write something nice, because I like to read those from time to time. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, all of that good stuff. Big B, any final words for the folks?
I got nothing.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll talk to you later.